I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello, and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I am so excited that every week I get to introduce you to another phenomenal woman. And not that they're an exception. What they are is they are people who've said yes to life, yes to bringing their best self to the planet, yes to being of service, yes to opening their hearts and inviting us to take a journey for our own health and well-being, joy, and freedom. So we do this every week. We're on all the platforms: Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon Video, on YouTube. Look for Women Awakening with Cynthia James. You can also go to my website, cynthiajames.net, and you can join my private community. There's gifts for you and lots of things going on in my world. So I am very excited. I'm introducing you to someone new to me today. Her name is Dr. Jayne Gardner. She is a true pioneer in using psychology in the business world to unleash higher performance in organizations. And once entrepreneurs see the difference her process can make, they will have harnessed a power greater than anything in business that's ever that they've ever experienced or ever known. So Dr. Jayne serves anyone who wants to unleash the unlimited potential inside each of us. She has devoted her professional career to a personal transformation process. It's called High Performance Breakthrough. And it's created to increase our level of fulfillment and happiness. And her latest book, Best Job Ever, she has co-authored with Joel Patterson, founder of the Vested Group, a software ERP company. And they have taken this process into the business world, showing how our personal mood and mindset impact engagement, accountability, performance, and ultimately the financial growth of the company. Dr. Jayne, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so glad to be here and know that we're awakening as women. It's time, isn't it?
Yeah, it most certainly is. Most certainly is. So I want to know, where you grew up, how you grew up. Because a lot of people kind of think that success just sort of drops in, and not that there's a path, an evolution. So how did you grow up?
Oh, Cynthia, thanks for asking. Hamilton, Texas, a town of 3,000 people at least. And I always brag that I was second in my graduating class of 27 people. So, hey, these classes, my daughter's in one of 5,000, but it was a great life growing up in a small town. It was also a place where I had fun as a child. And then there was a day that something happened that kind of changed it for me. And I think I probably closed down instead of kept in that childlike wakefulness, that joy, that exuberance of life. So I had two brothers. We were close in age. My dad was an entrepreneur in the town, very successful. And so I grew up in a family-run business, and my dad was up here to me. He was the leader in our family, and my mother helped him. And I played with both my brothers till I was 12 or 13, like we were equals. But, when we started going through puberty, my dad wanted my two brothers to go to work for him at the factory. And they did. And I began to see that, wait a minute, I felt left out. Mm-hmm. And so I asked my dad, I said, Daddy, can't I do something? I'm an artist, I could do some of the designs for your monuments, because he had a tombstone company. And he just kept saying, oh, I don't want my little girl in that dusty, dirty factory. Well, my brothers got to dress up in coveralls and goggles and had all what it looked like a lot of fun driving around with the other people working in the truck and going to lunch. So I just kept insisting, Dad, please, And I was pretty persistent as a little 13-year-old. So he finally said, I'm sure my mother told him this. He said, honey, why don't you come and you could work in the outer office and you could draw designs for me. And then by the end of the summer, I'll pay you like I do your brothers. I think it was $5 a day, which was a lot of money. Hey. And so I did. I worked all summer, Cynthia. I had so much fun. And I colored them. And I mean, they were beautiful. My mom suggested I put them in a notebook before I presented them to him at the end of the summer, which I did. And so the last day I went in and showed, and he flipped through them, and I could tell he was impressed. And I felt like I was part of the family business. So I went running out to the car because my mother was ready to go school shopping for school supplies, and I was going to, change from working in the summer to going to school. And then when I got in the car, she said, "Oh, honey, did you bring your colored pencils you'd been using with your dad? Because then we don't have to buy those. So run back in there and get them." So I went back in his office and he wasn't in there. And I looked around for my colored pencils and I couldn't find them. So I was kind of looking through things because he had set the notebook up on his file cabinet where he kept his important papers. So I started opening file cabinets, and then I stumbled backward and I saw that under his desk in his trash can were all of my paintings.
Ah,
I know. I was so hurt. You can imagine at 13 because I felt betrayed. I didn't understand. So I went running back out to the car, tearful. And I didn't ever tell my mom what happened. I never told anybody what happened. But I did, there was something that happened in my brain. I went to the the limiting belief I put in is girls are not as important as boys. Girls can't be successful in business. There were several of them, but it was really about girls in business that I jumped in on. I went back to school. I changed my future. I was going to be a business major. I went to be a teacher. And for about 15 years, as I grew up, I got to be a teacher, got married, and I did not think of that memory until I got my degree in therapy and I was a therapist. And then I had some business people come to me and say, why don't you go in a company and use your process of uncovering limiting beliefs? And, it could help our business. And I kept saying no. I did everything. I just knew I didn't want to do that. And so one day, as I was going through this process of uncovering people's limiting beliefs with them, I was teaching other coaches because it had become a very popular course. And one of the students said to me, "Dr. Jayne, well, what are your limiting beliefs?" And of course, well, I'm embarrassed to say, but you could just feel the color coming up in me. And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And she said, "Well, I'd like to take you through your own process and let's figure them out." And she did. And of course, the story came up when she asked me questions about my childhood, because that's where we form our limiting beliefs.
100%.
And so I realized what was holding me back from a big opportunity to step into the business world with my stuff, my whole process.
It's so interesting because our parents, even though they're doing the best that they can in any given moment,
Absolutely.
have no idea the impact it is
No.
having on us and our psychological welfare.
Well, I don't think I even wanted to bring this story up for a long time because I didn't want to hurt my father's feelings. He loved me. I adored him. But yes, he planted this belief in me that really held me back.
So here's my question. Did you ever have that conversation?
Yes, I did.
And what did he say?
It was long into, oh, I bet he was in his he's gone now, but I'll bet he was in his 70s at least. And I told him about it. And he looked at me so funny and he said, "Well, sweetheart, I don't know why you got that opinion because I've told your mother this a million times. Women are smarter than men." And I said, "Daddy, what do you mean?" He said, "Oh, honey, your mother, she's twice as smart as I am. And her business savvy is running our business half the time." And so
Wow.
it dissipated everything. He not only did he not mean to put that, I don't think he even believed it. I think he was trying to protect me,
Right.
you know. He,
Well,
he had he had a good intention.
well, yeah, but we're so fragile, aren't we? I mean,
Oh,
so I want to talk about your process. Tell us, what is the high performance breakthrough?
yes, thanks. That's a good transition because I found out as I was working with business people, and I started out in a mental health hospital, very seriously ill people. And I got very discouraged because I couldn't get any progress. There was only two solutions that were taught me in college. You could do a medication or you could talk them to death for years. And neither one of them were working. And so that's when I started thinking, there's something here I'm not getting. And I just started researching, what do people have in common that come to this place? And I realized any conflict they had, inner or outer, with relationships, with jobs, were caused from what they believed about themselves, mostly erroneously. They were
Mhm.
limiting beliefs that they held. So that's why I designed this process to uncover your limiting beliefs because usually they're unconscious to you.
Yes. So, and so tell me, are there steps to your process?
Mm-hmm. There are 7 dialogues, I call them, that I send you a document, you fill this out, we discuss it as a coach. I can do it in teams or I can do it just one-on-one with executives. I work primarily now with CEOs because what I do is I find out what their limiting beliefs are. And I do that through the steps of the process. I ask them to tell me stories about their childhood because the brain, it's all based on neuroscience, my whole
Mhm.
psychology background. So the things we remember in our life, the memories we have, are based on significance to us. We don't remember things that aren't important to us. We maybe remember a happy birthday, but mostly our brain is for protection. So it remembers the negatives because it wants to have us learn something different so we won't have that happen again.
Mhm.
So we're born full of unlimited possibilities, but as things happen to us, we start to build up these thoughts about ourselves that ultimately are negative and hold us back. So I developed a neuroscience process of unwiring and rewiring, installing new beliefs. So after we uncover your limiting beliefs, you go on a 3-day retreat all by yourself and you work out through the steps of the process what happened, you rewire it, and then you come back and you decide, what beliefs do I want in my head? Because we don't choose them when they come in as children, they just happen. So now as an adult, to take responsibility for our lives, we can't go around blaming our parents. That's not even fair. And so we began to take responsibility. And one of the new beliefs that I put in my head is that boys and girls, men and women, are equal in power.
Yeah, what I love about what you're saying is those limiting beliefs put us into survival and protection. And if you're
Absolutely.
there, it's not,
Mhm.
you're not functioning. And so tell me what you've discovered, because, yeah, as the CEO goes, so goes the company.
That's it. That's it.
What have you discovered about the freedom that emerges from these CEOs and the impact on their company?
Well, Cynthia, I have to say that when I interview a CEO, I have to decide if he has a growth mindset or a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
Because if he's willing to look within, he's my person. But a lot of CEOs are different. They know exactly what they think and they don't want to change anything. And I let them go.
Mhm.
But there are so many beautiful women and men out there who want to see what they're doing and change it if it can help their employees. So
Mhm.
I found one that I wrote my most recent book with. His name is Joel Patterson. And when he took the process, he was the one that looked at me and said, I want every person in my company to experience this. Because he said, I uncovered so much about myself and it changed my relationships with my daughter, my son, my wife, my employees.
Beautiful. Okay,
So
so the name of this book is Best
oh, let me
Job
show
Ever.
you. Let me
Okay,
show
let
you
me
the
see.
picture. So
Oh,
that's
awesome.
not ever. And his name is Joel Patterson, and my name is Jayne Gardner because he told me after we put this, installed it in his company, he said, we must write this up because other leaders want to know this. Because then we hired a researcher to research and interview everyone that took the process in his company and uncover what had happened to him because they might tell us something, but we wanted an unbiased researcher to come in and discover it. And I was surprised at what they discovered because what they found was that the women rose in confidence. The men began to feel more empathy. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, isn't
It was
that
different.
interesting?
Mhm. But as a woman, I identified with that confidence thing because I knew the limits I'd put on myself had held me back my whole life from being the confident woman I knew I could be. So the beautiful part of this is I get to watch people transform right in front of my eyes with a simple 3 month process, not going to therapy for years or taking antidepressants. There are times, of course, when you need those. But a lot of us just need to look inside and release ourselves from what we have done to ourselves.
Well, yeah, and if you're in a culture that historically has, I'm going to just focus on women for a minute, has said that there's this glass ceiling, instead of
Absolutely.
you bringing your best self, you're trying to navigate the waters of this glass ceiling. But if you're confident, then you get to focus on bringing your best self.
And isn't it interesting that men have more confidence in that than we do,
Mhm.
generally speaking?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's like when you were talking about your childhood and your brothers, your dad was
Yes,
like, "Come on in, you can do this. It's
absolutely.
all good," until like, "Yeah, we can do
Good
it."
old boy. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they already knew they could do it.
right, right.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, so now the intention for the book is to reach more companies.
That's right. I want to reach more CEOs that are open and willing because what the research also showed was after 1 year of the installation, uh, Jules' profits zoomed. And so
Mm,
what we discovered is happier employees equal higher profits. He
100%.
was he was offered a man wanted to buy his company 2 years later for 5 times what he had told me it was worth when I came in. So what CEOs need to know is when they allow their people to be cared for and valued, people work harder, they're more loyal, they don't leave you. They're invested in your why as a CEO, and
Yeah.
therefore you're going to do better in the long run.
Well, yeah, but then that takes great courage to let go of the control and the rigidity that has
Mhm.
been programmed into leaders.
And into I really think more men than women,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because 90 something percent of CEOs are men
Mm-hmm. Right.
still, which I want to change, because we as women can bring so many different uh, capabilities that, blended with theirs, it just makes it much more dynamic place to work.
Well, yeah, so I want to talk about this in terms of you. You know, ha what what have you discovered in terms of your own personal experience where, like, you're a woman coming in to teach them how to do it better? Has there
Mhm.
been resistance? And if so, how have you navigated it?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes. The walking into his company, it's a software company, an engineer. So he has maybe 10% women,
Mhm.
and very young, dynamic, smart young men. So the first team I had in introducing this process was about 6 young men, and we met. It was during COVID, so we met on a Zoom call, remote. And when I started the call, I started talking about emotions. And I know it was naive on my part, but the screens literally started coming down. They just blocked me out. They didn't want to listen to it. They went to Joel and they said, we don't need this. This is useless to us, blah, blah, blah. Well, so I continued. And basically, my confidence was rattled with that. I
Mm,
could
yeah.
tell, that I thought, what am I going to do here? I can't even get them to hear it. So what I did was I began to ask them questions about how they grew up. And it was interesting because after about 15 minutes of that, screen started coming up, because one of the guys shared a story that when he was in the fourth grade, his parents got a divorce, and he started talking about how it impacted him. Well, a screen came up and said, well, that's funny. Mine did too. And these guys started seeing some commonalities. And then they began to see that their marriages, they began to talk as men to men, because it was an all men's group. And they began to say, does your wife ever cry and you don't know what to do? And they started talking about emotions in this way. Well, by the end of the 3-month process, they were closer than they've ever been to another human being, because guys just don't talk like that to each other. So then what they got was they started wanting parenting tips. They wanted marriaging tips. And it became where if they had a woman customer, they didn't know what to do with her. And so walls began to break down, and they began to form this beautiful group of men. They're still meeting today, they told me just about a week ago when I was out there. And
So
so,
when
see,
you,
I think if I persist, I think that was the key, is I didn't give up and walk away.
yeah, but
I
you also brought heart.
I did. And isn't that the key right there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I co-teach a class at an engineering school. It's called Science and Spirituality, and we bring in mindfulness and we bring in, meditation and different stuff to these young people who are like, I need to
Absolutely.
get this done, but they want heart. They want to open.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
they want to feel
Yes.
heard and seen. And so okay, so you're also a parent.
5 children.
Well,
Yes.
bless you, is what I want to say there. Okay, so now I want to know, how did you manage having these 5 babies and building this business and standing in your center?
Mhm. I don't think I always stood in my center.
Oh,
There were times, oh no, I don't think I even knew what that meant, because my children are grown now. And when I was raising them, oh my goodness, they have gone, all 5 of them have gone through my process. And, it's been a horror on my part. I thought, oh my goodness, they're telling all these stories about their childhood, which they were. But what I discovered was that I didn't have to be perfect with it, that just opening up with them, and I began to say to them more and more, I made a mistake there because I lost my temper. I did what we all do. But instead of protecting it and, getting all definitely never going to admit anything, I began to see that having heart with them opened them up. And I started teaching them about repair.
Mm,
And I
yes.
said, after I screamed at you about that grade, that was not right. Let's talk about it. And they began to see that I think I was a person. And we began to get closer. And I think that got us through all those nights when I wasn't available doing homework for my PhD or building a business. That is the most difficult. I think that's the most difficult thing women face today is how do we love our family and still develop our gifts in business or in whatever we want to work on in art or teaching or whatever. I don't know about you, but that was my hardest
Yeah, me too.
problem.
My children are grown, and the same thing. It's like I didn't want to give myself away and just
No,
do
no.
family because I felt I had gifts. And so, finding the harmony, because I don't know that there was ever balance, but finding the harmony
There you go. Yeah.
was the thing. All right, I want to know, how do people find you? How do they find your work?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I have a website, drjanegardner.com. And I have so many articles there. You can read videos, just a library of help on parenting, but on business ideas. And I love my favorite group to work with are family run businesses, having grown
Mhm.
up in them. So that's what you'll find a lot of articles about is how do you run a business when your daughter is the admin and your wife is a co-owner? That's what Joel faced. And so I would love for you to look at my website, get some ideas, contact me on my email, drjanegardner.com, drjane at drjanegardner.com. Look me up.
Beautiful, beautiful. And ladies, don't forget the book, Best Job Ever.
Oh, I
And
would love it. You can get that on Amazon. Yes.
perfect. Okay, so Dr. Jayne, I asked the same last question of every guest on this show. The show is called Women Awakening. What do you think
Mhm.
is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet in this moment?
Oh, wow. Given, the political stage and everything we're facing in the world with war, that's a great question. For me specifically, it is to maintain your ability to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
That's the hardest for me
Mhm.
because I can give and you know present a lot of things, but when it comes to eating right, getting enough sleep, the basics of taking physical care of me. I have one of my new beliefs that I installed when I started my belief system is that I put my needs first. And it's so hard, you know,
Well, it is, especially because we are enculturated as women, to
aren't we
put others
now?
first,
Mm-hmm.
so Dr. Jayne, thank you so much for being here, for your wisdom. I love what you're doing in the world. The business sector needs you. I'm very
Oh, thank
grateful
you.
to have had this opportunity.
Well, thank you. Keep up doing what you're doing, helping women awake. We need to make that a journey, don't we?
We do. All right, ladies, I close this show the same way, and I give you the same message with different words. Here's the thing. What if you were completely open and available to reviewing your mindset? Do you have a growth mindset? Do you have a fixed mindset? What if you were open, though, to exploring better ways to love you, honor you, support you, bring your gifts to the planet and to your family? What if? And so I'm just going to invite you to contemplate that because you're here to live the best life ever. 100%. I'm so grateful to be with you every week. I love you, and I'll see you next time.